Women Ed is a global grassroots movement, and it originated in 2015, where women leaders decided to start talking, start sharing their stories, and think about what's happening in education, and how, as women, we can have a voice, and we can embark on a journey together that resulted in more women being represented in leadership teams, and more women feeling empowered to do things that maybe they did not feel brave enough to do. So if we move on to the next slide, you can see the definition of who we are and how we first were born in 2015, which seems like a long time ago, because the last year has seemed so long for everybody. But we are a young movement, and we look to continue sharing who we are and what we do, and getting more people involved in supporting women in education, and women's access to leadership, and to the right conditions and the right opportunities. So as far as our Spain group, you can see in the next slide that three of us decided to I don't know, launch Women Ed Spain, and maybe we chose last year, which was just a few days before Spain went into lockdown. We did it in a small event to mark the beginning of a network at Spain level that would allow us to connect not just with UK colleagues, but with colleagues all around the world. So I would like to invite my co-leads, my colleagues, to introduce themselves and to say something about their own journey into Women Ed, and who they are and what they stand for. So Kyra, do you want to say a few words?
Sure, thank you, Mercedes, and apologies in advance if you hear drilling behind me. There's building works going on above me. My name is Kyra Kellawan. I'm based in Barcelona. I work as head of education partnerships at a startup, career-focused startup called Experienceships. Before that, I worked in several different international schools as a careers and university guidance counsellor. And I came across Women Ed at a really interesting conference in 2019 at the Le Rosey International School in Switzerland, where there was an entire stage throughout the course of this education conference dedicated to Women Ed. So it was a day full of female-focused leadership events. I went along, I listened, I was inspired, I met the network leads. So Vivienne Porritt was there, I met Liz Free as well, who's now at a school in Switzerland, and basically said, how do I get involved? How do I start this in Spain if it hasn't been started already? They said, well, Mercedes is already on board, talk with her, and the rest was history. We decided to launch in March. As some of you know, you were there, and it was a wonderful, wonderful event that happened just before all of us had to be closed in our homes. But that day, the legacy, the spirit of that day has lived on in all of us, and we have continued to run events online. So personally, I've been running a series that's co-hosted by another member in Germany, Angeline Au, and we run monthly or bi-monthly events with the ECIS Collaborative for Educational Collaborative for International Schools, who sponsor a Women Ed / ECIS series, and we talk about all sorts of issues from male allyship and he for she supporters in schools through to safeguarding of young women during COVID. We've talked about, the pay gap. We've talked about how to fix things that we see are common to all of us in the international school space. But of course, here in Spain, we try to develop routes towards local schools and into trying to encourage our co-leaders in national systems to join us as well. So I won't say any more. I'll wait to see if Anne Louise has managed to join us and let her say hi as well.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, I got in. Thank you, and lovely to see you all. Yeah, I'm Louise Jordan, and my story is similar to Kyra's, where I went to an event and I was hooked. That event was actually run by Kyra and Mercedes, so thank you to you both for completely inspiring me. And yeah, I remember sitting in the hall thinking, this nonsense that's happening, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. And 4 days later, we were in lockdown in Spain, so go figure. But yeah, so joined with Spain, a similar scenario. How do I get involved? And here I am working alongside Kyra Mercedes. We get blogs from people on Twitter. So if anyone's interested in submitting a blog to Women Aid Spain, then please get in touch with Women Aid Spain or myself, Mercedes or Kyra. And yeah, really looking forward to connecting with you all. And thank you so much for letting me pop along and say hi.
Thank you so much for being there. Somebody just mentioned in the chat that it's important for us to mute the microphones when we are not speaking. So I think this is great if we can do it. So just make sure that the person who is speaking is the only one with the microphone on. Thank you so much.
Okay. So if we could share the presentation, I was introduced at the beginning. I'm Mercedes Hernandez Estrada, and my introduction to Women Ed was in 2018 when I was working in the UK, and we hosted an event, a Women Ed event and a Girls Ed event at our school, and we invited Vivian Porritt to come and talk to us. And one of the parts of that event was to get us all to commit to doing something. So the event ended with each one of us making a pledge to do something brave. And my something brave, as I was about to move back to Spain after 30 years of living and working in the UK, was to promote Women Ed. So that pledge became a reality, and now I need to think of new pledges and new challenges. And in anticipation of what we're going to be asking you, I wanted to hold on to that thought of a pledge or a challenge for yourself, because we'll come back to that later on in the presentation. So in the next slide, you can see what the objectives of this session are. So it's simple, it's easy to say, it's harder to do. So first of all, we want to share what Women Ed is about, the purpose and the objectives. Then we're going to be talking around the inequalities that affect women in education. Try to identify some of the underlying reasons, but also because we want to be positive in the way we see what's happening around us. Think about possible solutions, think about systemic but also individual and personal actions that we can all take to bring about solutions in our own sphere of influence. But if enough of us do that in our own sphere, those spheres will overlap and will create system transformation. And then finally, we want to encourage you all to be brave, 10% braver, and to embrace the idea of a challenge. So let's get started. So Kyra, do you want to tell us more about our 8 C's?
Sure, let's go for it. I think the way the slide is organized is they'll appear one by one. So let me see if I can remember them all. So the 8 C's are values, basically, that are aligned with the mission of Women Ed. So here they are, appearing now one by one. Clarity, so that's speaking clearly, understanding the clarity of the situation, understanding what needs to be done, looking at the figures, looking at the data, understanding why this movement is needed. And then, of course, communicating with each other, of course, and making sure that we make our voices heard, but also to communicate the aims and values of the movement in your wider spheres or in your wider context. Connection is super important for this, and it's something that we have stated since the start. We are a movement, a grassroots movement. We work by people volunteering and donating their time, their energy, their resources. Mercedes is a fantastic example of the fact that, the British Council School opened its doors and hosted us all in their hall, provided food, provided entertainment. This is the kind of connection that means that women came together that day and really had a moment of empowerment, which leads then to further collaboration, further confidence, a sense of community, so that no one feels that they have to live these issues alone in their own school or in their own context, but that you have people that you can share with, women and men who are supporters of the mission towards equality, and especially leadership equality. The challenge part is really important because, as Mercedes mentioned, one of the values is about being just 10% braver. It doesn't mean you have to start off by completely changing your life or going for, a job which is many, many steps ahead of where you are now. What it's about is challenging yourself and keeping yourself accountable to just turn on a little bit your confidence, so that you can say, what would I do if I was 10% braver today? And that could be starting a conversation or having a very small step towards a really much larger goal. And then, of course, the ultimate value, or the ultimate point of the mission, is to enact change, and for us to make sure that we can see tangible results and equality as far as leadership figures and representation for women in education. So we all try and uphold these with everything that we're doing, and hopefully they're all clear. Shall we move forward to the next one? I think we have a nice graphic here. So you can see them all represented, to understand the issues in education, to speak and be heard, to connect by face-to-face events when you can again, but of course online and social media. There are many networks you can take advantage of. Building your confidence and calling yourself a leader, stepping into the role of leadership, understanding what that means in terms of your relationships with others, addressing your own confidence issues, collaborating, looking forward, opening the doors to your networks and to your schools, pitching in, challenging yourself, as I mentioned, and then joining with other communities in your area. So there's the graphic that underpins everything we've been talking about.
Okay, so with the catchy title of Mind the Gap, we know in our sector, in education, women are overrepresented. We hold, as a percentage, a far higher number of posts than men do. But we talk about a gap. So before we move on to unveil what the gaps are, I want to give you just a few seconds to reflect. What gap do you think there may be between men and women in our sector? So you can use the chat function to put your notes on what you think may be the gaps between men and women, in particular in education. I'm going to do a slow count. And feel brave, the chat does not bite. Okay, you can continue. I can see some comments. Good. Right. So problems with a button, with a mute button. I'm hoping that I'm back. So let's unveil some of those. I can see that some of you have been given this some thought. So we talk about the gap in three key areas. First of all, as some of you have pointed out, is the number of women in leadership, particularly senior leadership positions. A second gap, which some of you have identified as well, is the gender pay gap in terms of salaries for similar posts. And then the third gap is around flexible working, part-time working, or other kinds of flexibility, and the access for women to being granted requests for flexible working. There's actually there's a day that we do not celebrate, but maybe we should mark rather than celebrate, which is the 14th of November. And the 14th of November is the Equal Pay Day. That was the date last year. And it's called the Equal Pay Day because most women are working for nothing after that day. If you compare the difference in pay that the male colleagues would be receiving. So you can look at statistics for what that gap is, and it is quantifiable. The gap for full-time work is over 13%, and it is wider if you look at part-time employment. So women earn less than men in 90% of all employment sectors. So you would think that in education, because you know, it's a women's sector, that will not be the case. But we'll share with you some statistics in that regard. British women are paid a fifth less than men on average. And that means that a woman in the UK on average earns 80 p per £1 than a man will get. 80 pence a pound. So you can see how those percentages and those sums highlight the pay gap. Even in female-dominated professions, there's still that gap, and it's more marked in leadership posts. So 42% of UK women work part-time compared to 12% of men. So there's another gap. And then all the other issues that we'll present later around, for example, pension benefits. Other group hit is that of women who are mothers. And there's something called the motherhood penalty and the fatherhood bonus. So women, on average, earn 4% less after every child. So there is some gap and some inequality. And the other bit of research that I want to share with you is of a double-blind study conducted in 2012. Male and female university staff looking to hire a lab manager were looking at, independently, were looking at CVs. One had the name John and the other one had the name Jennifer. And it will not surprise you, given the tone of this conversation, to know that John got more offers and John got better offers. So there is a women issue, there is an equality issue, there is a gap. So if we are more conscious about what that gap is and about what we could do to reduce the gap, let's start minding and understanding it, and then let's aim to reduce it. So Barack Obama in January 2016 said, and I think is a question that we can all think about, what kind of example does paying women less set for our sons and daughters? So we need to think about ourselves, but we also need to think about younger people, and we work in education. So we have our own sons and daughters, but we also have the sons and daughters of thousands of other people whose lives could be different if we share those messages and if we work together to mine that gap. So Anne-Louise, I believe you have some other data that you want to share with us.
No, Mercedes, no. It was to talk about the data that you had on the next slide. I think that I said that was really good data that you had provided for Spain. I thought it was really interesting, because a lot of the data out there is UK based or world based, and I think it's really important that we discuss Spain, as that's where we are. And if you can go over what you found here, I thought it was really interesting and really important to talk about.
I think there's another picture on the other side. If Sonia, you click.
Do you want me to break it down here, Mercedes? I'm happy to add.
Okay. Please do.
On this slide, sure. So in Spain, the pay gap is obviously an issue as well, and this is something that, you know, we use a lot of British data because Women Ed originated in Britain, but in Spain, women are overrepresented in lowest paid roles, and we have one of the highest number of hours of unpaid work in Europe. So what that means is 2.5 hours of our day is basically work that doesn't get counted as being paid when you look at our paid gap in Spain. Full-time women are paid less in most areas of the world. And what we have to look at is what's behind this issue. Even though things are improving slightly in Spain at the moment, there are improvements. For example, women aged between 22 and 39 who are working more than 30 hours a week now earn more than men on average. But after that, it goes downhill. So after that age, which is where we've talked about the motherhood penalty, those figures shift again. And so and you think about the implications of your final salary or your pay that you're receiving in later life on your pension contributions, then it's obviously still an important issue for us here as well. One of the reasons that happens, and maybe we can advance to the next slide, Sonia, is about confidence. And one of the studies that Women Ed used to talk about this is that there was an independent survey done amongst full-time women leaders in schools by EduData Lab, and it talked about how women likened asking for a pay rise or negotiating their salary as something as uncomfortable for them as going to the dentist. Men, when asked the same question, likened it to a wrestling match. And so this is some of the gendered perceptions, I suppose, of the uncomfortableness or the moment that means that it's from EduData Lab, Gillian. So we can pass you these slides and you'll be able to see where that data is held. But it's a very interesting concept that we are very uncomfortable with raising the issue. We're very, very uncomfortable with speaking up and asking for what we think is fair or what is required for us even. And so this is something that Women Ed wants to focus on, is that confidence gap that exists, and also something in the language and in the expectations of women to be, to be subservient or to be people who don't raise their hand or necessarily make trouble. And I think that's something that we also want to achieve when we look at tackling this issue. And we'll share the slides so that you can click on that link, on the outcomes link on this slide. It will be. So as we mentioned, full-time women in full-time roles in primary and secondary schools are paid less on average. We can see here that the gap is highest when you look at classroom teachers, but also when you look at heads. And of course, the shift when you go to heads of secondary is the highest between the gender pay gap. So we're looking definitely at how to address this within our context here in Spain. We know that our reach at the moment is that we have more contact with schools that have an international staff, but we also think that it's incredibly important that we look at this data and that we understand it from a local context, a local perspective. And so that's why we're trying to encourage local members to help us data gather, to make sure that we can see whether there really is parity in the schools in our local cities, as well as understanding the overall picture of the international school context. If we just move forward to the next slide. This is a really interesting slide I wanted to discuss, which is more recent. So if we look, of course, at the historical inequalities that existed before COVID, they were already shocking. What we see now is that based on UN Women reports from the United Nations, we can see that gender equality in the wake of COVID has actually taken a bit of a step backwards. And that was based on a survey that talked about women doing more of the unpaid or more of the physical or household-related labor, which includes, of course, cleaning, childcare, teaching the children and taking responsibility for the homeschooling of children when schools were not able to be in session physically, cooking meals and shopping. And you can see that the representation of that unpaid work and that labor that takes time and energy, which is unseen and undervalued by society, is largely shouldered by women, and 44% of men, responded that they never engaged in cleaning, that they never did any of the household tasks. And this is something that, when we move forward into this Choose to Challenge idea for this International Women's Day, we have to ask ourselves, but also ask the men around us, what are you prepared to do in order to challenge this? Because this is a very, very real moment that we witness of great inequality that has been shown to be affecting the lives of the women who are in service roles in the household. So I think, and Louise has said it there, men in the group, what are you prepared to do to challenge this? Or maybe these figures don't represent what happens in your households. But if so, we need more households like yours. And this is something that we're working towards with the messaging that we talk about in Women Ed, that we want to raise these issues and make sure that they're understood and that they're discussed, even though they might be uncomfortable for us to discuss. Shall we move forward to the next slide?
Yes. Here we go. Mm-hmm. Can you see it?
I can. Go for it, Mercedes or Anne-Louise. I don't want to talk too much in a row.
Mercedes?
Yeah.
I don't want to jump in if you've got it, something planned.
And Louise, do you want to take on the solutions, which is where things start getting sort of more interesting, isn't it?
Sorry, Mercedes, I have to jump in just a second because I just want to share that we have reached 103 participants in the call today.
Wow. Well, can we remind them that they've got questions on the chat that they could engage with? We're looking for some change here. So some questions in there that I've put in just over when Kyra was talking. If there are any men, will you be doing to challenge what you've just heard about the data, and women, what will you do to make sure that you don't become a number like that? So please engage with the chat. It's an amazing way to get your thoughts read out, and we do look at the chat. So yeah, please engage. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, there are comments coming through the chat, so that's great. So we highlighted a number of the issues. We highlighted how the recent year has actually given us some bad news in terms of the patterns and made a step back, but we can continue to move forward. It can be a blip. We can make it be a blip. So we need to find solutions. We need to find ways to move and to continue to drive forward towards equality. And we believe that women need to feel confident to apply for leadership roles, and they need to understand what are the barriers. There are some issues, and maybe two of them are worth sort of thinking about. There will be individual context and individual situations, but as two sort of bigger issues, one of them is around entrenched beliefs. So I know that within the British Council we've been talking about bias. And conscious bias, and what that means for us, and what that means for those in charge of recruitment and selection processes. But the other one, which is totally within each one of us, within our control, is those understanding our own self-limiting beliefs. There's a lot of research done into the reasons why women do not apply to certain posts, how lacking in confidence they are in their own ability to be selected for those posts, and how the approach of men is very, very different. Men are more likely to apply for posts even if they don't meet quite a few of the criteria, whilst women is the opposite. They need to feel that they meet it all before they feel brave enough to apply for posts. So we need to reflect on how we perceive ourselves and how willing we are to put ourselves out there and start applying for posts, and how within networks such as this one we can support each other with guidance with interview practice, with how to complete a good letter of application, because some of us who are a little bit older than the rest have had probably quite a few experiences, some of them positive, some of them maybe not so much so, but we can share within our networks to support women in feeling braver and overcoming the anxieties that are associated sometimes with applying for promotion and for leadership posts. So, Kyra, do you want to move on to the next slide?
Sure. Yeah, so it's important that all women in education know that it's possible to find solutions from a variety of different areas. And in this presentation, we have some links embedded that you can go in and explore. We've got things like an article called "Nice Girls Don't Ask" in the Harvard Business Review, which offers useful advice about how we find this hard and what we can do to improve. There's a website also called Take the Lead, and they publish articles about, for example, there's an article that was published in the Times Educational Supplement explaining how to start negotiating for a higher salary in a school context. And if it's from fear or from lack of confidence or just self-worth issues, then making a committed practice to having a mentor or attending some of our events can help to improve these issues. So we often ask, what's the worst that can happen? If we don't ask, we won't get. And being able to seek development opportunities, of course, when you don't have a supportive team at the top can be difficult, which is why this network exists, so that even if the change is not feeling possible in your current school setting, there are possibilities to connect with others who have been in your shoes. And that could be, changing your school eventually to find the right place for you. But in the end, it's always easier when you have somebody who's been through it themselves and who can help to mentor you from afar, who's both removed from the context that you're in and maybe doesn't feel the same negativity day in, day out. But also, if you're not in the setting which is negative, then you can also give some of that encouragement to other people who need it. So all of these are conversations we recommend that you join into, and we're going to show you ways that you can do that at the end. Commitment from the top is, of course, crucial. Like I said before, you have a Mercedes in your school, you have an Anne Louise in your school. You're going to find settings that are open to change and are open to discussion and talking about what needs to be done. But this is a cultural transformation that needs to happen. We recognise that often the leadership is some of this might fall on deaf ears depending on how the leadership is structured. So bring as much data as you can to the table. Bring these arguments that Women Ed will help to provide you with if you're having resistance or if you feel that there are structures in place that don't want to listen. It's not always possible unless you have that buy-in from a systemic, overarching goal from the top of your leadership chain. So we will try and support you in any way we can, whether that's connecting you to another leader in another school or connecting you to somebody in another setting. It's always possible. So yeah, reasons for change. Hopefully you see why they're needed. Hopefully you understand what the mission is. We can move forward now, and I'll furnish you with some ways to connect. Oh, sorry, Mercedes, this is you, first of all. This is a bit of interactivity now for us, so before we do that.
Because we've been talking a lot. Some of us have been talking a lot. But this is not about the structure within Women Ed is not one that is sort of top down, but is a collective, and it's a sort of joining of ideas. So there's a lot of stories out there. Each one of us has a number of stories that they could share. And there are a number of them already within the community.
Sounds like my dog. It sounds like exactly like my dog. I'll take over, don't worry. So what we want to ask you to do is to share with us your story, if you are happy to do that in the chat now. I can see that there have been comments from men in the group asking us to share more data and more information. Of course, Sonia has mentioned the Comisión Plan de Igualdad, and any thoughts or comments you might have there. Anne Louise has asked you all a question about systems in place at your in your school, but also in your setting, to challenge bias, and if not, what you can do to drive the change. So our question for you is, do you have a story to share that you're comfortable with sharing here in this setting. Maybe you're not comfortable sharing it right now. Maybe you'd like to think about it and write it up for our blog or for us to share on your behalf anonymously. We're happy to do that. But, you know, talk to us. Now is the time for us to hear from you. If there have been moments when you knew you needed to tackle your imposter syndrome, or you needed help knowing your worth or asking for what you needed, have you had to call out unacceptable behavior? If so, how did you do it? How did you put yourself first when it was necessary? How did you raise your voice? We'd love to know if you can be 10% braver right now and share that with us, so that we can get a sense of taking the temperature of the room, who we have here with us, and some of the challenges that you're facing within your setting.
Okay, so I'm going to start and break the ice. I don't know if many of you know, but I used to work for the Down Syndrome Foundation, which is a completely different setting. And I was asked to start and run a school in Rivas, which is one of the small cities and location in Madrid, Spain. And I had to hire all teachers and set up the kind of the program to run the school, make sure that all students are in, etc., which was massive. But I have to say that the most difficult part for me was to work with the people who have built the building. So the architects and the people who are kind of on the ground floor making the building possible. So I learned very quickly that they don't speak to me. They were trying to look for a man in the group who was representing the Down Syndrome Foundation. Unfortunately, there was no man. It was just me. So it took me ages to make them realize that I was the one they have to speak about. And I have to say, it was a very weird experience for me. And I feel that I had to be not 10% braver, but kind of 50% braver just to get my voice heard. So that's my personal experience, and happy to share it with you.
Thank you, Sonia, for breaking the ice. We have Gillian saying it was useful to find out we have a Comisión Plan de Igualdad. I don't know if anyone can speak to that a little bit more.
I could do it myself, but I don't know if from the people in the room somebody wants to take over. Sol, maybe you want to say something about it. I don't know.
I was muting myself. Thank you, Sonia. Yeah, I could share that. The Plan de Igualdad is a government requirement that was brought to light after a Real Decreto, but our company was doing most of the things that were required for it before the law was enforced. So we created a commission to create the plan, and basically it's based on a diagnostics. Both sides. Sonia is not very happy with this confrontational working group, but any commission like this is created by part of management and part of the reps. So both parts studied how we do things in the company in terms of numbers, addressing different parts of the company, but basically facing the numbers between how many men and women we hire, how many men and women we've got in the company, how many men and women are in different areas or different departments, how much do they earn, which is an important part of the study as well, and leads us to say provisionally that we've got an equal pay situation in the company, which is really important. The Equal Pay Day was 2 weeks ago, if I'm not wrong, and we should be very proud that we work in a company that is meeting this requirement to have equality in the company. And after going through these diagnostics, we're starting to form the real plan, which is going to go through the different areas of our work and address possible inequalities and present solutions or working ways of getting there to make our company equal which is not only talking about women having the same rights or women having the same opportunities, but it's also showing us which parts of the company men are under-resourced or underrepresented, because we're working towards having same rights and same opportunities, but all of us, not just women. And that was it.
Thanks so much for this. Yeah, I think that's something I really find very interesting in our sector. To have really, for example, men as teachers in early years. I think this is something very important also for our students. So some of the things may go also in this direction. So yeah. A lot of things to reflect, that this is my favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've also talked about, and we want to look at the power of training, of identifying ways to put on professional learning opportunities that address some of the issues around confidence, about leadership, and so on. And that's something that we all can do within our reach. The mentoring and coaching schemes and so on that are happening are also helping change that culture. Sometimes a person at a time, and sometimes through groups such as this, who get together and want to understand better. But I think the power of sharing stories and of inspiring people and helping people see a way to change the reality that they can see. So we want to focus and spend some time investing in people through training and supportive mechanisms.
I think that's really important, because one of the things that we can celebrate in this meeting is that, BC as an organisation is doing well. It's going in the right direction. It seems to be a bit of a beacon. But often when we have these meetings with educators from a range of schools, we hear really, really shocking stories, and staff come together to share kind of their worst moments, almost to get support from one another on just how far behind they feel they are. So maybe one of the roles everybody involved here is that if you work for an organisation that is leading already and that has processes and policies in place that are really helpful for its staff, that you benefited from, then sharing that with the others and giving them hope or giving them practical techniques into how to change and shift realities can be the role that you will have to play, because I know that it's not the same. Not every school has a Mercedes at its helm. Not every school has an Anne Louise, high up in the primary section. So it's really, really important that there is hope and support given. Lots of comments coming in.
Can I just jump on that a little second? And I want to say congratulations to Gaia, who said that she was pleasantly surprised when she got a job when she was 7 months pregnant. I almost wrote it. I wanted to say it, Gaia. You got the job because you deserved it, and that should never be a surprise to anyone. Am I right? Like, that should be the part of the done thing. You get the job because you deserve it, whether you're pregnant or not. And these kind of stories are the ones that we want to hear, Gaia, that there are more and more people, more women getting jobs either during maternity leave or when they are pregnant, and we shouldn't ever have to hide it. And I know that from personal experience, when I wasn't given a job and told it was because I would have been on maternity leave and it wouldn't have been appropriate. So I have lived through the other side of that, and I wish I would have heard your story, Gaia, and many, many others who have been given jobs when they've been pregnant. And in fact, my head teacher, she got her job when she was pregnant, and the one of the best head teachers I know. And if I think, well, I now know if I get pregnant and I go for a head's job, I will do it. I will not stop. Whereas if I hadn't have heard that story, I would have thought, well, the last time I was told I couldn't have the job because I would have been on maternity leave. I was also told I wasn't getting another job because I had time to settle in after being on maternity leave. So that affects your ability to know your own worth. And this is why it's so important to hear your stories and to go, do you know what, this this can happen and should happen. So please share your stories. And as I said at the beginning, Women Ed Spain have blogs that we publish, and get in touch, let us know your journeys, and go onto the website as well, where there are blogs already on there from he for she as well. We need more he for she's, we need more change. And so lots of stories about personal journeys and how you've got around it. My personal journey is not fantastic. It took a long time to get here, and it took a long time to tackle the imposter syndrome, but I would not have tackled it if it was not for Women Ed. And I've said that many times, haven't I? It's a fact. After reading the book, I completely changed my whole thought process, and it was only from reading other people's amazing stories. So share your stories, and that will incite change.
Great. Some great comments coming over also around training, which I definitely think it's really important. It's about having more knowledge, but also training our own unconscious biases and prejudices. Yeah.
Okay, so on the theme of sharing, maybe you can move on to the next slide. Kyra, do you want to tell us how people can get involved and share with us? There are a number of modern ways.
Yes, so we have, so basically Women Ed was founded on Twitter. It's still the most used format for the communication between members. So if you're not on Twitter or you've never engaged with it, now's the time to start, because actually as a place of support for educators, it is fantastic. It can be overwhelming, but if you start by following Women Ed feeds, then you can also interact with other groups in other areas. There are hashtags, there are regular chats that are held on there where people can share, and it doesn't have to be all consuming. You can definitely control and monitor what you follow and what you don't. So at Women Ed is the big main channel, and then we have at Women Ed at ESP for our local communications. And if we just skip forward to the next slide, Sonia, we have a range of different, oh, sorry, it's the same slide, but they will appear slowly. Women Ed has Facebook, it has a presence on Instagram, obviously the Twitter accounts, and we have a local group, Women Ed Spain. So it's exactly like that, Women Ed España on LinkedIn, which you're very, very welcome to join. We post information about news and events happening locally, but also repost everything that is relevant to the wider audience. And if we skip forward one more slide, and YouTube as well, of course, you can see all of the events that are recorded that you can't make live on the Women Ed YouTube channel. So our question for you as we sort of start to finish up and move towards questions is, what will you do today? I think it's been really, really important to hear those comments about self-investigation and self-study, both in an organizational context and in a personal one. You know, change begins with you examining your own sets of biases and your own admissions of where you can do better. And that goes for all of us. All of us hold some privilege in some way, and all of us need some help in achieving our goals. So the question is, what will you choose to challenge? This is the hashtag that goes along Women Ed and International Women's Day, this year. I've put in some links here for you so that you can get a feed of the next events. There are tens of events happening in different areas of Women Ed over the next few days, from book groups and discussions about the book or about other books in leadership that people are reading. There are events such as slow chats being hosted on Twitter. There are events on diversity and inclusion. There are regional events. There are events about your CV, how to write a better cover letter. So if you go to that link, you'll see everything that's upcoming. You can read the book. That's often a good way to start. It gives you a lot of practical takeaways and things that you can take back into your setting, into your schools. And you can also join us straight away on Women Ed España on LinkedIn so that you can connect with all of us and create your network. So yeah, what will you choose to challenge is our question to you. Maybe we can go back a year in our minds to those of us who were there at the launch in March last year, and think about the challenges that we made, because we also made pledges in that physical space, and we wrote them on a big board. And I wonder if maybe Anne Louise, if you'd be happy to share what you chose to pledge last year, and how you set about attacking it, or how you achieved it, if you did.
Yeah, I did. Well, my pledge was, I have a son, and my pledge at that point was to raise a feminist boy. And what that actually extended into was you know, as a teacher and as a deputy head in a school, to change the policies in the school to be gender inclusive and to ensure that the boys in our school were feminists. And I really do feel that we are way on our journey now into that, and that was my pledge last year.
Sonia, do you want to share yours? I know you wrote it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the sharing the slides so we have the chance to see each other, which I think is always great, you know, when we have so many people in the room. Yeah, I just put it in the chat. You know, I choose to challenge the way parents influence small children. I find it's very kind of, I don't know, interesting, I would not say, but probably astonishing for me to say how sometimes parents still try to influence their boys and girls, and, you know, like kind of, okay, we are going to have a birthday party in the classroom, so let's have the female presence and the male presence, you know, and you're talking sometimes of 2- and 3-year-old children and how we already have female and male presence, no? So probably that is the challenge for me. And Louise, you've raised your hand. I do not know if you want to say something now.
I think it's been like that since the start. Sorry.
I thought your hand was raised because you were in the choose to challenge pose.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, let's do that. Thank you. I should have went with that. I wasn't fast enough. Is anyone else wanting to share? I wrote in the chat that now that I'm on you know, I've moved on in my journey, that as a deputy head and hope to be head teacher one day, that I choose to challenge the recruitment processes that we go through. So that is my next part of the journey, to ensure that the recruitment process is fair and just. So that's my challenge now. So I don't know if anyone, if you see their raised hands, would someone want to put their mic on and say? I can't see anyone.
You're on mute, Sonia.
Sorry, I was just saying that maybe Anne-Marie or Catherine want to share what they are doing at the school in early years, and maybe also Kaya, you want to share what we're doing with teaching centers, etc. You see, these are the children. You can hear them already.
Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here today. It's Anne-Marie. Hi, Mercedes. In early years, we're just on celebrating International Women's Day. What we've asked our female relatives to do today is to, we've invited them virtually to come and visit the school, to share either their passions, their hobbies, their interests, their professions. So we have in the class next door, one of our mums is a dentist, so she's going to be coming in this week to share about being a dentist. So we're hoping to have more offers. And we've also extended the offer to our wider families to nominate women today who have had, you know, an influence in their family for whatever reason. So we gave examples of sports people and novelists. So we're hoping over the course of the week that we can sort of create a community board space where we just celebrate women. And I agree with Sonia that I think challenging the stereotypes from as young as pre-nursery, as you know, we have children as young as 20 months starting in the school, and it's really important that we make sure that gender bias is removed from the start. And it does often start with a birthday party, you know, that parents, not this year with COVID, but the books that we share with the children, the songs that we sing. And I completely agree that we must question and just make sure that the imagery around the school is also diverse and inclusive. So yeah, they're just some of the things that we're doing. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share, Sonia. That was lovely.
Kaya?
Yeah, so for my class, we've got conversations on International Women's Day happening in the My Club section. And we wanted to use English Extra as a platform this year, but it wasn't possible. But we've put lots of materials in the EDI channel, which you can find for the young learners there, which we've got. It's also got materials from last year, which I've kind of adapted so you can use them this year. And there's a lesson on rap music and using it to sort of break down obstacles and raise awareness and bring about equality. I think last year I was running around the Barcelona Centre with purple wristbands for the students and the teachers, and Mark Howard came that day, and I managed to snap him in the pose for Each for Equal, which was this pose last year. And this year it's Choose to Challenge. So I don't know, with the last minute remaining, if we could try and get our participants to strike the pose for this year, and if possible, maybe try and do a screenshot if anyone's willing to do that. If so, then you just have to unmic yourself and raise your right hand, or if you're left-handed, if you're left-handed, whatever hand you use to challenge. And I'll try and do a screenshot while I do that, because I need both hands to do that. So I think there's 2 more people would be great there. Okay.
I can see Louise got a picture for our Twitter. I love it. Louise, you're so on the ball.
Do one more. Can you start? Yeah, that's it. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you.
Gaia, Joshua was just asking if you can share a link to the EDI channel materials here in the chat. So since the chat remains in place, maybe you can do it a little bit later on, which would be probably great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we have reached the hour which the session was supposed to kind of take. So I don't know if you have any kind of comments you still want to make, or if somebody wants to unmute him or herself. Thank you for everybody being in the room. And obviously, if anybody wants to say something, now is the moment to do so. Okay, we have already some thank yous over there too. Okay, so I have to say many thanks for Mercedes, Gaia, and Anne and Kyra to make it possible. It's really amazing that you had the time today to be here. The session is recorded for those who cannot join us now because they are teaching or working, and we will share it via the Spain staff newsletter. So
Great.
probably use the rest of the day also to share with other people that you have been here and what inspiring ideas you take away.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. Keep in touch.
Yes, we'll see you on Twitter or on LinkedIn or on Instagram soon.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.